Comic Book Syndicate assemble!
So now we're going to talk about the actual nuts and bolts of making the costumes. So I guess my first question would be, because looks amazing to me, all of this stuff. Like I would have no idea how to put half of it. I usually buy anything that I wear. I love wearing costumes. But what costume inspired you first to be like, well, I can make that?
Yaya Han is a very well-known female cosplayer. She is lovingly known sometimes as the Queen of Cosplay. And she was on the TV show Heroes of Cosplay, where they followed her and some other cosplayers when they went to conventions and competed. But I always just did it for fun primarily until I went to school to learn how to do sewing and things like that, that I started really upping my skill level and wanting to do like, oh, I can make that. It was a lot of, all right, I can try to make that. Oh, if I do, gotta do this. And then it was a lot more work than it is now, I find.
But you have a passion for it in the sense that, I mean, not only are you just going to school for it, but...
I started cosplaying before I kind of got, like I like drawing clothes when I was younger, but I think cosplay kind of led the way for me getting into fashion, because it's what I first started sewing was cosplay.
And have you been picking up any sewing skills, or?
Yeah, actually, this is, Alicia's been making / I've been commissioning her to make most of my costumes since we've been best friends. And this year, we were definitely procrastinating a little bit, and I actually had to sew the lightning bolt onto my costume, which was the first time I had sewn stretch before, so that was an experience, but I've definitely been taught well.
Because that's the thing too. From a distance, the costumes always look extremely incredible,
Yeah,
and then when you
there's a joke that I go around with my friends, which is the cosplay rule, which is 5 feet. If it looks okay from 5 feet away, your cosplay's good.
If anyone's closer than that, they should not be closer than that.
Yeah, because it's always, for me anyways, in this last Christmas con that just went by, I got to be on stage and hang out with everybody who brought their costumes up. And it was amazing, even when I did get really close to everybody, just the skill and the labor and the ingenuity that went on, where I've seen people take spaghetti strainers, paint them orange and cut them in half and use them as a cage, as part of a helmet. Like, what would be, I guess, your biggest pat on the back so far of finding an everyday item and turning it into something? Because I know that's got to be a big part of it, right? This looks really expensive.
That would probably be our Catwoman. Our Catwoman that we did last year. This is made out of a mask that we got from Maxine's.
Okay.
It's an adult mask.
Adult mask, yeah.
Which goes with the Catwoman.
It was a full hood, and then we just cut out, put it on her.
Move the satellite
We
out.
put it on her, and we cut out the eyes and a section for the mouth. And then we got shoulder pads and sewed them on to the hood to look like cat ears, and it turned out really awesome.
That is awesome.
This was the biggest ingenuity kind of craft that we had going.
Another prop, I wish I had brought it with me, but my sister was a female version of Han Solo for a Comic-Con, and her boyfriend had managed to take 2 old fake leather purses and turn them into a gun holster, and he was extremely proud of that because it already had all the rivets and everything in it and the straps, and it worked really well.
So the idea that I have that you got to be, I don't know, well off or rich or have tons of money and invest, all that, is it, so it's more sort of, we guess.
It all depends on your budget. Like usually I spend a bit more money because I'm really passionate about what I do. I buy the fabric and make it from scratch, so that usually does cost a bit more. But if you, like, this costume was partially bought, partially made, so it did cut down on the cost. Whereas Becca's was a mixture as well. Yeah. But hers was, we've managed to find some items that really cut down on our expenses.
Actually, you were talking about this before, about commissioning stuff. How hard is that as far as like finding other people that do the work? And
if you Google it, you will find tons of people who make tons of different props for any character in any universe that you'd ever want. Yeah, somebody makes it.
A good resource is actually cosplay.com. There's a whole bunch, it's a huge forum of people that make costumes. If you're having trouble making something or finding something, you can post on the forum and they can link you to someone that sells it or some tutorial that can tell you how to make it. Like, the internet is a great source for cosplay or crafting in general.
Yeah, because I've seen, and this would always sort of, I don't know, the word trip me out is the wrong way to put it, but has always been one of the more intimidating parts, is when people are like melting plastics and doing all that stuff. Like, that just seems scary to me. Is it that?
Yeah, a lot of it is trial and error. Like, this is made with I think it's called Warbla, It's used by Yaya Han, and it's a mixture of kind of wood and plastic, and you shape it with heat. And a lot of the times it's used for complicated armors and things like that. So it's just, a lot of it, it's just experimentation. Like this mask was the first time I ever used Warbler.
Yeah.
I had never tried to use it before, never bought it. I had no idea how to work with it. So there was...
I'll tell you, this is probably the 50th mask that I ended up making. I ended up having over 200 templates, and I ended up having a ton of masks in different colors, just testing the foam, trying to figure out what worked for my face, what worked for the best for what mask I wanted to look like. So it's a lot of trial and error. I would definitely suggest buying maybe a little more of the material if it's your first time working with it.
And the big thing I think, like when I did my mask, is measure twice.
3 times.
Or 3 times, yeah, because I was making my template from my measurements of my face, so I was just taking like a fabric measuring tape and just putting it on my face to try and get the idea of the size to do it, and then I cut out a paper template, held it up to my face first. Like, it's always, don't do it in your final stuff first. Practice with other stuff to see how it'll look before you use your more expensive material.
What are the tools you need? I mean, I'd assume it's a sewing machine.
Glue guns are good for when you're first starting off. They don't usually last more than 1 day. Usually the costumes do fall apart when you use a glue gun. Learn to hand sew, because that's what Becca learned how to do.
Especially if you're doing any superhero stuff, stretch is always fun to work with.
Yeah, stretch is difficult, so hand sewing usually does save you a lot. Put it on and then stretch it to know how it'll look and then sew it is good for stretch.
Safety pins.
Safety pins.
Double-sided tape.
I've got
permanent markers.
safety
Always
pins
have them
right
on you
here.
at all times.
Yeah. My cosplay kit always has safety pins in it, because you never know when something's going to fall apart and you're going to need to safety pin it in place.
And when you've pulled the thing apart for like the 8th or 9th time, 20th time, and you're starting again, what would you recommend to drink?
I'm not that heavy of a drinker, so usually what I do is I step away from it for a minute, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do this other thing for a little while, because if you stay focused on it too long, it's just going to drive you crazy, and you're going to end up hating it.
I'd suggest the Deadpool shot. It's a vanilla Coke, marshmallow vodka, citron vodka, and a little bit of grenadine.
I knew Deadpool was a bit of a jerk, but wow,
It
that's
goes down real
fast.
smooth, and it makes you keep going.
And I was looking at the gloves, and you said you made these, correct?
No. They're made up of a bunch of little tiny pieces, which are incredibly difficult to sew unless you have lots of experience doing it. So eBay is your friend.
For gloves?
Yeah, because you buy some of it, you make some of it. Gloves, this is her second year with gloves, my second year with gloves, and we've bought them. Because they're just so complicated to make, it's just better to buy them typically.
If you have the skill, go right ahead.
But you're going to be crying a lot. It's going to take a lot of tries to get them right. I don't know if you can see, but the thumb alone is 2 pieces. Then there's the whole glove. Then there's each fingers there's a one piece right here, 1 piece right here, and 1 piece right here. And they're all incredibly thin and tiny. And trying to work with that with the sewing machine is so difficult.
And you start inside out, right?
Yeah, you
Always.
sew inside out, and it's
Always.
always.
And mine are a different material. I have a fake leather, which would probably be more difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you were saying, that was the other thing, too, I was going to ask about. You were saying about the lightning bolt. Was what kind of material again, and why?
It's a spandex.
Yeah, it's a spandex, the same as the suit that I'm wearing right now, and
So doesn't that like contract in weird ways and become really difficult?
there's a specific stitching you have to do with stretch material so that it will pull the way you want.
Yeah,
because
you
if
gotta
you
use on a machine, use a zigzag stitch, because you have to have what's called ease, which is a little bit of extra thread, so that when you're wearing it, it actually still has enough thread to be able to move. Whereas if you were sewing it, like this one is just a simple stitch, so it has no stretch in the stitching. So if you put that on, say this, you would have your threads, like when you wear a t-shirt and you hear the thread snap, that's kind of what's happening, is there's not enough thread in it,
instead of
so
a
it
stretch
breaks the
stitch where I
thread.
could take this and stretch it.
And it still
fit me.
stretches to fit her okay.
So when you're first starting out making costumes, I guess that's what I'm getting at, is what are the things you want to avoid?
Avoid stretch. Stretch is a more complicated construction. If you don't know how to work with it, I don't recommend it for your first project. We didn't start doing, well, I didn't start
Don't
doing
do
stretch.
what we did. Don't wait till the last minute.
Don't wait till the last minute. Avoid stretch. Avoid shining fabric, like something like this, the satin.
Okay.
Because usually on your first try, it's very slippery when it sticks together. So it makes it very hard for you to keep it straight while it's going through the sewing machine. If you're doing it by hand, it is a bit easier, but it takes a lot more time.
And for yourself, what do you think we should avoid?
Avoid being alone and find a friend who's in the fashion design program. That's what I would say. Because
Cosplay is more fun with
cosplay is more fun with friends. Don't sit in your basement at 3 in the morning by yourself and do it. Sit with a friend in your basement at 3 in the morning and do it. It's always good to have an opinion. It's always good to have a second pair of hands, especially when you're sewing or doing anything.
When I was first starting out, I always made cosplay with friends. Like we'd always all get together. We'd each work on our own costume, and say if we got really bored of working on our costume, we'd be like, oh hey, you want to switch? I'll work on yours for a little bit, and if you work on mine, and then you don't get as frustrated with your own costume. And I find personally, I work harder on someone else's, and I'm like, oh, I want to make it look so pretty for my friend, and so it kind of keeps you going and keeps you on track. And sometimes it is distracting to have your friends because you want to do fun things or have fun party times, but eventually you do have to get on task, even if it's just the night before.
So cosplay has a bit of that sort of, like when you're in a band, someone's got to kind of lead the way a little bit, and someone's kind of, yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed today's segment on cosplay.
Yeah, and I hope, that everyone is encouraged to enjoy cosplay, maybe even make their own costume. I mean, when you're inspired by a character, there's nothing more rewarding than becoming it.
Thank you.